I'm Ryan Bentley, here again with another streamside story on the beautiful Payette River in Horseshoe Bend. Got to put the U in it. Today, I want to talk about fear. Some rational, some irrational. And I was at a get-together recently, and we were talking about childhood fears. And one that seemed to have more commonality to it than not was the fear of the grate at the bottom of the pool. So I don't know if this strikes home with you at all, but when I was a kid taking swim lessons, in like the lower basement of the YMCA in Wenatchee, Washington, there was a big, dark grate. And as I was learning to swim underwater and looking at it, my imagination ran wild with what was under that grate. Of course, it was just a drain, but my 6-year-old self didn't know that. My 6-year-old mind decided it was a holding tank for great white sharks. And then at any moment, it would open up, they would come out and eat me. I would be there, blow my bubbles, and I'd look down, and every time I would come up for a breath and stick my face back in, I knew that a giant shark was about to just eat me in a small chlorinated pool in the middle of central Washington. Terrified. Turns out a lot of other people have had that fear. As I got older, I went back to that same pool and swam down to the bottom, and the grate was only about yay big. And I don't think a great white shark, no matter how motivated, could get out of it. So we got to thinking about other things that we're afraid of, and we started talking about the outdoors and stuff like that. And now, having guided for more than 25 years somewhere out in the great outdoors and creation, I've heard a lot of funny stories. My favorite is, the favorite theme, I should say, is how the smallest of creatures elicit some of the greatest fear. So we all know the tale of elephants being scared of mice. And I wonder if that doesn't come from a little bit of, sometimes my fear, but broadly construed, most people would take out, of them being scared of noises they hear in the woods. Oftentimes, it turns out to be just a mouse, but you'll be sitting there in the dark of night out in the middle of the woods, and a mouse will go by or something like that. And it's always told that it is a Sasquatch or a grizzly bear or something. And you go and you look, and it's a small mouse. One time, though, we did have one of our staff, dear sweet Ezra. If you haven't met him, you got to come, because he is an amazing person. But one night, his task was to crush the canned chicken cans and throw them away. He decided that he would make kind of a halo for himself on his bed out of the chicken cans. And that night, there were some coyotes that came near camp, and they were howling and they were upset. One of their pack had gotten hit on a road not too far away, and I think they were just mourning their lost comrade. But they also got a whiff of chicken. And Ezra woke up to a bunch of coyotes trying to figure out how to sneak in and eat the chicken out of the cans that he had resting above his head. As far as I know, that's some of the closest encounters we've ever had with animals outside of mice. My favorite mouse story, though, is on a trip. One time we came up to a cabin, and we had been out all day long, and it was raining and sleeting. We got in there, and we made a fire in the wood stove, and the cabin had been around for well over 100 years, and it had 2 bunks. You had to sleep tip to tail in it to get 4 people in there. And you could reach out and touch the other wall. But the wood stove was like this big. It took up like a third of the place. We got it rip roaring really good. We were getting dried out. We're getting happy. And all of a sudden, we hear movement in the walls. And that time, we didn't think it was a Sasquatch. We knew what it was. We knew that it was mice. Maybe demon-possessed mice, but mice, just basic mice. When we go to bed, we're just hot as all get out. We turn the place into a sauna, and we're laying there. As I'm drifting off to sleep, I sometimes have a bad habit of sleeping and mouth breathing. And all of a sudden, I'm laying there almost asleep, and a mouse runs right into my mouth. And I was terrified. I was screaming and I'm spitting the mouse out over to another friend, and she's like, they're in my hair, they're in my hair. She had these beautiful dreadlocks, and there were mice all in her hair, so we're trying to get them out, like, ah! And we were terrified, and for kind of good reason. So the rest of the night, we were just huddled up there, trying to like open the doors. There were mice everywhere. Well, I had a flashlight pointed at a hole so they wouldn't come out. Finally, the place cooled down and the mice, figured out whatever they were going to do. But it was one of the worst nights ever we've had. And so when we look at all of the trips that we run, all of the things that we do, there can be lots of fear. Everything we talked about so far is mildly humorous. But when we're out there with these young people, for a lot of times, it's the first time they've been ever out there. We had one staff that just here in Horseshoe Bend one night, the geese were flying over. This has never been out in the country before. And she hears geese overhead and she jumps up and goes, what's that? Like, those are geese, and they're, honking. She goes, oh, didn't know what it was. So we get people from all over the Northwest. Many of them have never even seen stars before. And I've seen young people crying at the beauty of God's creation, just in the handiwork He has in the stars. And it makes me think a lot about what fears that we imagine before we go out to do something. And I wonder how many people, myself included, have inhibited, well, myself and anybody else, from the fears that we have. And so we were thinking about, in 1 Peter, it says to take all of our fears and cast them on to the Lord and hold them up. And I'm amazed at something an old guide once told me. He said, you just got to start. And in his story, he was up on the Grand Teton, and they had climbed up, and it was raining and it was snowing, and he was huddled in his little bivy sack. And they were going to turn around, and one of the first rangers in Grand Teton National Park came by, and he kind of kicked him and went, come on, boys, we got to go. You just got to start. And they said, oh, well, we'll go for a little while. And they started. The clouds broke and the sun came out. And to this day, it was his favorite climb ever. Now, the day he told me that story, we were sitting at the top of Moores Creek Summit to go backcountry skiing, and it was just raining cats and dogs. And he told me that story, like, great. So I went out and thought, well, maybe it'll turn to good snow. It didn't. It was a horrible day, but we still got out there, and I got to hear the story, and it was still a lot of fun. And now I get to tell it to you. And so I just wonder how much we inhibit ourselves from fear, where we take little mice and turn them into giant monsters. And I wonder how much we've limited ourselves by not stepping into that fear appropriately. And then recently, I've been asking myself, how am I just trying to take care of everything instead of offering up, even casting it onto the Lord? Something He says to do. And I wonder how much peace I've robbed myself of not taking Him up on what He offers. And so as we go along, as we're looking at our summer season, or these objectives that we want to do, or just trying something new, my encouragement first to myself and then to all the rest of us here is to take that step. Don't let a mouse be turned into a giant monster. And then look hard to the Lord, and maybe for the first time, offer that up and ask Him for the peace that He wants to give you. So thanks for taking the time to talk about little monsters and fears and great white sharks in the bottom of YMCA pools. And we hope to have an adventure with you soon.
Thanks for joining us for Streamside Stories. Click the link to subscribe and join us for more stories and virtual adventures. This isn't the only way we want to adventure together, though. We also want to invite you to come join us for an adventure and create some stories of your own. To do so, head to www.yd.org to connect with us and our basis to start your journey today. Thanks.